They say poor behavior gone unpunished or without coincidence will be repeated. My name is Brian McIntosh. Today's the Daily Dose. And this is how bad habits are formed. This is how you always wonder yourself, how in the world did I ever get into this habit? We all have habits. We all have habits that are affecting our productivity, that are affecting our efficiency, that are affecting our ability to rise to our level of potential in our areas of health and wellness and fitness and relationships and business and everywhere else. And it's our habits, you see, that hold us back. And some of us have gotten into some habits and we wonder, like, how in the world did you ever even get into the habit? And here's what I want you to know. Some habits are obvious, right? I mean, look, if you have got a habit of, for example, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, the consequences of that are well documented, right? So it's obvious that's a bad habit. I mean, we all know, we're all educated on that one, right? What about the habit of maybe not telling the truth? There's plenty of evidence to support that that's a bad habit, right? But some habits are more insidious. What if you've got a habit of just showing up late all the time? Can that affect your reputation? Can that affect your relationships? Can that affect your effectiveness with people when you're communicating with people, your ability to close contracts or close deals? Of course it can. What about foul language? What if you've got a habit of using really poor language? Can that affect relationships? Can that affect your ability to influence or lead? Can that affect your ability to close deals? Can that negatively, adversely impact maybe some business relationships? And the answer is of course. So sometimes we have habits that we don't even realize are affecting our lives, but they are. And the question is, how do you get into these things, right? And let's just use foul language as an example. How do you get into, who wants to use some of those words routinely, right? I don't think many of us wake up and go, you know what? I want to be a potty mouth. I think that's what I want to do, right? No, of course not. What happens is that poor behavior gone without consequence will be repeated. So you use a bad word. Nobody says anything about it. Okay. Well, you do it again. Nobody says anything about it. Well, okay. Before too long, it becomes your habitual way of speaking. And maybe the consequences begin to catch up with you later. And that's when it begins to affect you negatively. It's just like health and wellness, right? How do we get into the habit of eating, fried foods and fats and carbohydrates and all the nasty stuff, the simple sugars and avoiding vegetables and fiber or anything that's good for you? How do we get into that habit? Well, the answer is because the first time you sit down and have a McDonald's Big Mac, you don't have a heart attack. Right there in the chair, right? You're like, It doesn't work that way. It takes years of neglect before you die of a heart attack. So because the consequences aren't in your face, the behavior tends to be repeated. And it's an unfortunate side conversation, or it's an unfortunate fact that many of these poor behaviors are also some of the most fun, right? The foods that are the worst for you are the ones that taste the best. Right? We all know this, okay? So the question is, how do you identify and change your bad behaviors? And the answer is just take a look at your lifestyle. Just take a look at where you spend your time and where you spend your money. Start with your checkbook and your calendar, right? Maybe do a time log. Sit down and look at where you spend every single minute of every single day. It sounds tedious, but it will be very telling. You do it for 3 days, and it will tell you what habits you have. Maybe you have a habit of killing 20 or 30 minutes on Facebook 5 or 6 times a day. That's 3 hours of productivity gone, all right? So a time log will help you to identify how you spend your time. What about a food log? Write down every single thing you put in your mouth. That will tell you exactly how many calories you're consuming and will identify for you maybe some of your bad habits. Maybe you've got a bad habit of hitting the snack machine at work every morning around 10 o'clock or so, and you're putting an extra 500 to 600 to 700 calories a day in your body that don't need to be there because it's a habit. You see, it's not hunger, it's just habit. These are things that you can identify. And once you've identified them, then you can begin to replace those habits with different behaviors. Now, by the way, I want to be really clear. You can't break a habit by just not doing it anymore. So if your habit is going to the snack machine at 10 a.m. every day at work, you've got to replace that with something else. Maybe it's go walk around the block. Maybe it's walk out of the building and go take a spin around the block every morning at 10 a.m. Give yourself something else to do, right? So you've got to replace your poor behaviors with a different behavior in order to eliminate the habit. You're essentially just going to replace that habit with a different one. But we get into habits because the consequences of our behaviors are not instantaneous. Sometimes I wish they were. But it's a good thing that they're not, right? Because it would be a real bummer, wouldn't it? If you went to a party and somebody was like, hey, want a beer? And you're like, sure. And then your liver fell out. That would be very bad, right? So we understand that we get ourselves into these habitual forms of behavior because the consequences aren't instantaneous. But if we know the long-term consequences now, then we understand what behaviors we need to change, and then we can go to work on changing them by just simply replacing them with something more productive. But understand this, and this is fact now, your habits design your entire life. So get into them cautiously and manage them. Identify them and fix the ones that need fixing, because your entire world now is a reflection. That's the Daily Dose, guys. Go make it a great week.